Mom, why were you crying by my bed last night? My daughter suddenly asked at breakfast. But I had worked all night on the night shift. Watching the recording from the nursery camera, I froze. I always believed that a mother's intuition is not just words. It's a special sense. When you know something is wrong with your child, even if everything looks perfectly fine, that very feeling started haunting me on a chilly September morning when my 4-year-old daughter, Mia, came down for breakfast, clutching a doll I had never seen before. "Good morning, sunshine," I smiled, setting plates on the table. "Hi, Mommy." Mia climbed onto her chair, carefully seating the doll beside her. I put a plate of pancakes decorated with strawberries in front of her, and only then truly noticed the toy. It was a porcelain doll with long, dark hair, dressed in an old-fashioned lace-trimmed dress. In our era of plastic Barbies and soft plush animals, it looked strangely antique and out of place in the hands of a 4-year-old. What an unusual doll. I leaned closer to examine it. "Where did you get her, sweetheart?" Mia looked at me with surprise, as if my question were the silliest thing in the world. "You gave her to me, Mommy." She hugged the doll closer. "Last night." I froze, the coffee cup stopping halfway to my lips. "Last night? But I was at work, Mia. I had the night shift, remember? Daddy tucked you in." Mia shook her head vigorously, her chestnut curls bouncing in all directions. "No, Mommy. You came when I was almost asleep. You said you brought me a present. This one." She lifted the doll. "Her name is Agnes. She's very old, and you told me I must take good care of her." A chill ran down my spine. I had truly spent the whole night at the hospital. I only returned home at 6 in the morning, when Mark, my husband, was already getting ready for work. He confirmed that Mia had slept peacefully through the night, and he hadn't gone back into her room after putting her to bed. "Sweetheart, I think you dreamed it," I said gently, carefully taking the doll from my daughter's hands. "I didn't come last night, and I didn't bring this doll." The doll was heavier than I expected. Its porcelain face was delicately painted, with fine features and bright blue eyes that looked at me with an expression I could only describe as knowing. A vague uneasiness crept over me as I studied the toy. "No, Mommy, it wasn't a dream." Mia frowned and reached for her doll. "It was really you. You even sang me my favorite lullaby." Now I was truly alarmed. "Mia, listen to me." I sat down beside her, keeping my voice calm. "I didn't bring you this doll. I don't know where she came from, but I definitely didn't give her to you." Mia's eyes filled with tears. "Are you mad at me?" Did I do something bad? I pulled her into a tight hug. "No, sweetheart, of course not. I'm just worried. Maybe someone else gave you the doll. Maybe Grandma or Aunt Sonia." Mia shook her head, still clinging to me. "It was you, Mommy. You even wore the same dress as now, and you smelled like your perfume." My stomach clenched. At that moment, Mark entered the kitchen, already dressed for work, briefcase in hand. "What's going on here?" he asked, noticing my tense face and Mia hiding against my chest. "Mark, do you know where this doll came from?" I showed him the antique toy. He frowned, studying it. "Never seen it before." "Why?" "Mia says I brought it to her last night while I was at work." Mark sat down beside us, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "Mia, honey, maybe it was just a dream?" he asked softly. "Mommy was at work all night, remember? You saw her leave in the evening and I tucked you in myself." "It wasn't a dream," Mia insisted stubbornly. "Mommy came later." She opened the door very quietly and sat on my bed. At first I thought I was asleep, but then she touched my hand and I woke up. Mark and I exchanged glances. His expression was as troubled as mine. "Maybe she just got confused," he whispered to me. "You know, kids this age sometimes mix up reality and imagination." I nodded, but an inner voice told me something was wrong. Mia had never been prone to such fantasies. She always clearly distinguished dreams from reality. "Look, I'm late for a meeting." Mark checked his watch. "We can talk about this tonight. Maybe we should just ask your parents or Sonia if they gave her the doll?" I nodded, though I was almost certain none of them would ever give such an old-fashioned and frankly somewhat creepy toy to a 4-year-old girl. After Mark left, I decided not to push the conversation about the doll any further. Mia had calmed down and was now happily telling Agnes about her other dolls and toys. I discreetly snapped a photo of the doll to later search for information online. Perhaps it was some kind of rare collector's item, which might explain its unusual look. However, the strangeness didn't end there. A few days later, when I came to pick Mia up from kindergarten, her teacher pulled me aside. "Eleonora, I wanted to talk to you about Mia," she began cautiously. "Lately, she's been telling the other children unusual stories." I tensed. "What kind of stories?" "She says that you come to her at night and bring her gifts." The teacher spoke softly so Mia, who was gathering her things in the locker room, wouldn't hear. "That you tell her secrets and promise to take her soon to some new home. The children, of course, took it as just a game, but—" She hesitated. "I thought you should know." I felt the ground slip from under my feet. "Thank you for telling me," I murmured. We'll talk to her about it." On the way home, I tried to gently ask Mia about her secrets with me, but she only shrugged and said that I had asked her not to tell anyone. "You even put your finger to your lips, just like this," Mia said, mimicking a familiar gesture I really did use often. "And you said, 'Shh, it's our little secret.'" Another chill ran down my spine. I had never asked Mia to keep secrets from anyone. On the contrary, I had always explained to her that nothing should be hidden from her parents, especially if someone told her to. That evening, after putting Mia to bed, I told Mark everything. To my surprise, he took it much more calmly than I expected. "Ellie, you're worrying too much," he said, wrapping his arm around my shoulders. "Kids make things up all the time. Remember last year when she was convinced there was a little dragon living under her bed?" "This is different, Mark." I pulled away. "It's one thing to have an imaginary friend and something else entirely when a child insists someone comes to her at night looking like me. And where did that doll come from?" I checked with all our relatives and friends. No one gave it to her. Mark sighed. "So, what do you suggest? Call an exorcist?" He tried to joke, but after seeing my look, quickly grew serious. "Sorry, I just think we should be rational about this. Maybe the doll was among the things your mother gave us for storage after the move, or perhaps a guest accidentally left it behind." It seemed unlikely, but I didn't argue. Instead, I suggested we install a camera in Mia's room. "Just for peace of mind," I added when Mark frowned. "If nothing happens, we'll know Mia is just having vivid dreams." And if. I couldn't finish the sentence. Mark reluctantly agreed but insisted we not tell Mia. He didn't want to scare her or make her feel we didn't believe her. The next day, I bought a small surveillance camera and set it up on the bookshelf in Mia's room, aimed at her bed and most of the room. It was connected to my phone, so I could check the recordings any time. The first few nights passed quietly. Mia slept soundly, sometimes talking in her sleep or turning from side to side, but no one entered her room except me or Mark when we checked on her before bed. I began to relax, convincing myself Mark had been right, and this was all just a child's vivid imagination. Perhaps the doll really had been among some old belongings, and Mia had somehow found it and invented the story of a nighttime gift. But on the 5th night, everything changed. I came home from the night shift around 5 in the morning, tired but satisfied. We had successfully completed a complicated surgery, and the patient was stable. Mark was still asleep, and I quietly went into the bathroom to shower before getting a few hours of rest. Standing under the warm streams of water, I felt the tension of the past days slowly leave me. Perhaps I really had overreacted to a child's fantasies. After showering, I wrapped myself in a robe and tiptoed down the hall to peek in on Mia. Her door was shut, just as it should be. I carefully opened it and looked inside. Mia was asleep, curled up and clutching that same doll. I stepped closer, leaned down, and gently kissed her forehead. She didn't wake, only smiled faintly in her sleep. I tucked in the blanket and quietly slipped out, closing the door behind me. In our bedroom, Mark was still fast asleep. I slid under the covers beside him, careful not to wake him, and almost instantly drifted off myself. Late in the morning, I got up to fix Mia breakfast. "Mommy, why were you standing by my bed crying last night?" she asked in a trembling voice over breakfast. "You looked so scary." I froze, not knowing what to say. "Mia, what are you talking about? I wasn't in your room last night. I was at work, remember? I only came home in the morning and you were sound asleep." "No, Mommy," Mia pulled back, staring straight into my eyes. "I woke up and saw you standing by the window, crying. I wanted to ask why you were sad, but you looked strange. Not like you usually do." It was a day off, and Mark had just come down to the living room. "What's going on?" he asked in a sleepy voice. "Mia says she saw me in her room last night after I got home from work," I explained, feeling my heart pound. "But I only peeked in around 5 a.m. and then I went straight to bed." Mark rubbed his eyes and glanced at the clock. "Maybe you dreamed it, Mia?" "No," she exclaimed. "I saw Mommy. She was standing by the window, crying, and she wasn't dressed like she is now." I exchanged a glance with Mark. In his eyes, I saw the same unease that must have been reflected in mine. "Let's check the camera recordings," he suggested quietly. We turned on cartoons for Mia and went to our bedroom to review the footage. I opened the app on my phone and scrolled to the time when I came home from work. There I was, entering the room, leaning over the bed, kissing Mia, adjusting the blanket, and leaving. Exactly as I remembered it. "See?" Mark said with relief. "There was no one else." I wasn't so sure. I rewound the footage. Around 3:30 a.m., Mia suddenly sat up in bed, staring toward the window. The recording showed no one near the window. The camera's angle didn't cover that part of the room. But from the expression on Mia's face, it was clear she was seeing something or someone. She didn't look scared, more surprised and curious. Her lips moved as though she was speaking to someone, but the camera's microphone wasn't clear enough to pick up the words. After a few minutes, Mia lay back down, now facing the window, still watching that direction. Then she seemed to drift off again, and about half an hour later, she woke fully and ran into our bedroom. "What does that mean?" I whispered, a chill running down my spine. "It doesn't mean anything," Mark said irritably, closing the app. There was no one on the recording. Mia might have woken from a nightmare or just, I don't know, talked to an imaginary friend. Kids do that. "But she looked like she was really seeing someone," I insisted, and she was very specific. Me standing at the window crying. "Eleonora," Mark took my hands, "you're working too much and sleeping too little." We're both exhausted. Mia probably feels that tension too. Maybe she just needs more of our attention. I knew Mark was right about the work and the exhaustion. The last few months at the hospital had been especially intense, and I really had been spending less time with Mia than I wanted. Maybe all these strange stories were just her way of drawing me closer. "All right," I sighed deeply. "Let's try to spend more time together. I'll ask to cut down my night shifts." Mark smiled with relief. "Perfect idea. And I'll try to help more around the house so you'll have more free time." We returned to the kitchen where Mia was finishing her cereal, engrossed in the adventures of cartoon characters. She looked perfectly normal, just an ordinary, happy child. Watching her, it was hard to believe that only half an hour earlier she had been talking about a strange, crying figure at her window. I decided to follow Mark's advice and simply spend a nice day with our daughter. We went to the park, then to her favorite pizzeria for lunch, and afterward to a bookstore, where I let her choose a few new books. She was delighted and didn't mention the strange figure or my supposed nightly visits even once. That evening, while tucking Mia into bed, I noticed that the doll Agnes was nowhere to be seen. "Mia, where's your new doll?" I asked as casually as I could. Mia shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe she went out for a walk." "Dolls can't walk, sweetheart," I said gently. "Maybe you left her in another room." "No." Mia shook her head. "Agnes said she had to go away for a while to a girl with red hair, but she promised to come back." A shiver ran down my spine. "Mia, dolls can't talk." "Agnes can," Mia answered seriously, "but only when no one else can hear. It's our secret." I wanted to ask her more, but Mark, standing in the doorway, shook his head warningly. "Don't encourage it," he mouthed silently. I nodded, kissed Mia's forehead, and wished her good night. Turning off the light, we left the door slightly ajar, just the way she liked it. "Don't dwell on this," Mark said when we returned to the living room. "It's just a phase. She'll outgrow it." I nodded, though the voice inside me whispered that something was wrong, something more than just a child's imagination. That night, before falling asleep, I lay awake for a long time, listening to the sounds of the house. Everything was quiet, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone, that someone else was in the house, watching us. And whatever was happening with Mia, this was only the beginning. 2 weeks had passed since Mia first spoke of my night visits. During that time, nothing especially strange had happened, except for her occasional conversations with the invisible Agnes. The doll itself we never found, despite searching the entire house. I even secretly checked the trash bins, thinking Mark might have thrown it away, believing it was for the best. But the doll was gone. I followed Mark's advice and took a few days off work. We spent a lot of time together, going to the zoo, attending children's shows, baking cookies, and watching cartoons. Mia looked happy and relaxed, and I started to believe Mark might have been right, that all those strange stories were just her way of getting my attention. But one day, I came home early from my night shift. I had left for work with a heavy heart, carrying an inexplicable sense of unease. After finishing the post-operative notes, I got ready to leave. It was already almost 4 in the morning. As I drove up to the house, I noticed a dim light glowing in Mia's room. Probably the nightlight we always left on for her. The rest of the house was dark and quiet. I slipped inside, trying not to make a sound. In the hallway, I took off my coat and shoes, hung my bag on the hook, and tiptoed into the living room. It was silent except for the steady ticking of the wall clock counting the seconds. Climbing the stairs, I peeked first into our bedroom. Mark was asleep, sprawled on the bed, snoring softly. I smiled and gently closed the door. Then I headed toward Mia's room to check on her. As I reached the door, I noticed it was ajar, about the width of a hand. That was odd. Mia preferred it closed tightly. Otherwise, the hallway light bothered her. Maybe she got up to go to the bathroom, I thought, carefully pushing the door open a little wider and peeking inside. Mia was asleep in her bed, breathing softly. Her favorite stuffed rabbit lay beside her, and the blanket had slipped to the floor. I stepped quietly into the room, about to pick up the blanket and cover her, and then I heard it, a faint rustling from the wardrobe in the corner. The sound was barely audible, but in the stillness of the night, it seemed deafening. I froze, listening. Maybe it was just the old house creaking, or a tree branch scratching against the wall outside, but no. The sound was definitely coming from inside the wardrobe, as if someone were hiding there, trying not to be heard. My heart started pounding. I slowly turned toward the wardrobe, not sure what to do. Wake Mark? Grab Mia and run? Or just check what it was while she slept? Trying not to panic, I slowly walked toward the wardrobe. The rustling stopped, but I was sure I'd heard it. I reached for the handle, held my breath, and yanked the door open. In that instant, something shoved the door hard from the inside, throwing me backwards. I lost my balance and fell to the floor, painfully hitting my tailbone. In the dim light, I saw a dark shape dart out of the wardrobe. A woman. I only saw her from the back. A slender figure with her hair tied in a bun exactly like mine. She was dressed in dark clothing, and in the weak glow of the nightlight, I saw with horror that her silhouette, her hairstyle, even the way she moved, were eerily like mine. It was like watching my own shadow come to life, moving on its own. The woman bolted to the window, wrenched it open, and without looking back, jumped outside. I screamed, calling for Mark, and rushed to the window. Our bedroom was on the second floor, but beneath Mia's window grew thick bushes, and I saw the dark figure land in them, get up, and run quickly across the backyard toward the fence. "Mark!" I kept shouting, my eyes fixed on the fleeing figure. "Mark, come quickly!" Mia woke from my screams and now sat up in bed, staring at me in fright. "Mommy, what happened?" she asked in a trembling voice. I didn't have time to answer. Mark burst into the room, disheveled, pulling on a t-shirt as he came. "What's going on?" he blurted. "Are you okay?" "Mia, there was someone here." I pointed at the open window. "A woman." She was hiding in the wardrobe and jumped out the window when I found her. Mark ran to the window and looked outside. Then he switched on the overhead light, checked the room, and went to the wardrobe, pulling the doors wide open. "There's no one here," he said after checking every corner inside. "Are you sure you didn't imagine it?" "Of course I'm sure," I cried. "I saw a woman." "She jumped out right there." I pointed again at the window. Mark came over and hugged me. "Okay, I believe you. We need to call the police." He took out his phone and dialed while I went to Mia, who was still sitting on the bed with her eyes wide in fear. "It's all right, sweetheart." I sat beside her and hugged her. "No one's going to hurt you." "Mommy and Daddy are here." Mia pressed close to me. "Mommy came back," she whispered. I pulled back and looked at her. "What do you mean, honey?" "I just got back from work." Mia shook her head. "No, you already came." "Earlier. You said you were going to take me soon to our new house, that we'd live just the two of us and there would be lots and lots of toys." I felt the blood freeze in my veins. "Mia, that wasn't me. I was at work until morning. That was someone else." "No, it was definitely you," Mia insisted. "You stroked my head like you always do." She demonstrated the exact gesture I always used, running my hand from the crown of her head to her forehead, and then lightly tapping the tip of her nose. "And you smelled like your perfume, and you even sang my song." I didn't know what to say. It was impossible, yet Mia was describing things only I could know. Little, intimate details of our relationship, special gestures and habits. Mark finished speaking with the police and came over to us. "They'll be here soon," he said, then knelt in front of Mia. "Sweetheart, tell us more about the mommy who came to see you." "When was it?" "Tonight," Mia replied. "I woke up because I felt someone sitting on my bed. It was Mommy. She smiled and said she'd missed me all day. She brought me another toy. This one." Mia leaned down and pulled from under her pillow a small plush kitten I had never seen before. Mark and I exchanged a glance. His face was as pale as mine must have been. "And what else did she say?" Mark asked carefully. "She said she would soon take me to our new house where it would be very beautiful. That we'd live there together, just the two of us, and with another girl because—" Mia trailed off, looking at Mark with a guilty expression. "Because what?" he prompted gently. "Because Daddy doesn't belong there," Mia finished softly. "She said Daddy mustn't come with us because it's only for mommies and their little girls. I told her I didn't want to go without Daddy and she got angry. Then she heard you coming, Mommy, and hid in the closet. She told me to pretend I was asleep and not tell you anything." My breath caught. It was so horrifying I couldn't find the words. Someone my daughter mistook for me was planning to abduct her. "Eleonora," Mark squeezed my hand. "Check the camera. Maybe there's something there." I nodded and pulled out my phone, opening the app. We had set the camera to activate with motion, and now I scrolled back to the most recent events. And there she was, a dark female figure slipping into the room around midnight. In the dim light and poor night vision quality, her face couldn't be seen, but I watched her walk to Mia's bed, sit down at the edge, and stroke her head. They spoke together, and the woman handed Mia a toy. Then, when the sound of my return could be heard, the woman quickly hid in the wardrobe. On the recording, you could see me come into the room to check on Mia. Then, moments later, the woman burst out of the wardrobe and slipped out the window. "Oh my God," Mark whispered, staring at the screen. This really happened." The doorbell rang. The police had arrived. Mark went to answer while I stayed with Mia, holding her close, trying not to show my fear. The officers were professional and thorough. They inspected Mia's room, especially the closet and the window through which the woman had fled. They examined the ground beneath the window, where crushed bushes and shoe prints were clearly visible. I showed them the camera footage, which they copied for further investigation. Then they questioned all of us, including Mia, doing their best not to frighten her more. "It does appear you had an intruder in your home," said one of the officers, Lieutenant Miller, "and it seems she's been here more than once. Have you noticed any missing keys or signs of forced entry?" Mark and I shook our heads. The house was old, but we had replaced the locks just a couple of years ago, and we only had 3 sets of keys. Mine, Mark's, and a spare kept at my mother's. "She may be getting in through the window," suggested the second officer, Sergeant Thatcher. "The girl's window opens onto the backyard, and the bushes below could break a fall. And if you don't have an alarm system—" "We'll have one installed tomorrow," Mark said firmly. Lieutenant Miller nodded. "Good idea. In the meantime, we'll keep surveillance on the house. It might also be best if you and your daughter spent the night somewhere else until we catch this woman." I shook my head. "We won't run from our own home. We'll just lock all the windows and doors and sleep together in our bedroom. And we'll set up cameras in every room." Mark agreed, though I could see from his face he would have preferred to follow the officer's advice. They left us their contact information and promised to patrol the neighborhood. Before leaving, Lieutenant Miller pulled me aside. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "in my experience, this looks like the work of a stalker or someone mentally unstable. And from the way your daughter describes her, she's deliberately imitating you, trying to win the child's trust. Please be extremely careful. Don't leave your daughter alone for even a minute until we catch this person." I nodded, a chill running down my spine at his words. "Thank you. We'll be very careful." After the police left, Mark and I did everything we could to secure the house, checked and locked all windows and doors, pushed furniture against the more vulnerable entry points, and installed the extra cameras Mark kept in the garage for his office. We decided Mia would sleep with us in our bedroom, at least for the time being. Lying between us, she fell asleep quickly, but I lay awake for a long time, straining to hear every sound in the house. Who was this woman? Why had she chosen us? Mia? And how long had she been coming to my daughter, pretending to be me? The thoughts spun in my head without rest, but exhaustion from the long shift and the stress of the night finally won, and I drifted into an uneasy sleep. In the morning, we began reinforcing the house's security. Mark took the day off, and together we went to the hardware store where we bought new locks for every door, bars for the downstairs windows, and a full alarm system with motion sensors. While the specialists installed the system, Mia and I sat in the kitchen, trying to act as normal as possible, though it took all my strength not to show my fear and anxiety. "Mia," I began carefully once Mark stepped out to check on the workers, "do you remember when Mommy first came to you at night?" Mia thought for a moment, stirring the remains of her cereal. "I don't know exactly. A long time ago. Maybe when I had my birthday." Mia's birthday had been 3 months ago. That meant the unknown woman had been breaking into our house at least since then. if not earlier. The thought made me feel sick and helpless. "And what did she do when she came?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay calm. "Just talk to me," Mia shrugged. "Told me stories, gave me presents. Sometimes she asked me to show her my drawings or tell her what I did during the day. One time, she even brought me ice cream, even though you said no sweets at night." Mia giggled as if remembering a funny secret. Inside, I felt myself tighten. This woman wasn't just breaking into our house. She was systematically building a relationship with my daughter, undermining my authority as a mother, creating the image of a good mommy who allowed what I forbade. "Mia, listen to me." I took her hands. "You need to know that woman is not me. I never come to you at night when you're supposed to be sleeping. I will never ask you to keep secrets from Daddy, and I will never ever take you somewhere without him. We are a family and we are always together. Do you understand?" Mia looked at me seriously, but in her eyes I saw confusion. "But she looks just like you, Mommy, and talks like you, and smells like you." "I know, sweetheart. But it's not me. It's someone who wants you to think that. And if she comes again, if you see me at night in your room or anywhere else, when you know I should be at work or with Daddy, you must call Daddy right away or scream. Promise me?" Mia nodded, though I could tell she still didn't fully grasp the situation. For a 4-year-old, the idea that someone could pretend to be her mother was too complicated and frightening. Mark came back into the kitchen and I changed the subject, not wanting to upset Mia further with talk of what had happened. By the end of the day, our house had become a fortress. New locks, bars on the windows, an alarm system, cameras in every room. We did everything we could to protect ourselves. The police set up surveillance, an unmarked car stationed across the street with officers ready to respond at the first sign of danger. But despite all these measures, I couldn't shake the feeling that this woman, whoever she was, would find a way to return, that this wasn't over. And unfortunately, I was right. Time passed, and life gradually began to return to normal. After that night, the unknown woman did not appear again. Police surveillance was withdrawn after 3 weeks, when it seemed there was no immediate threat. Mark and I kept the reinforced security measures, the cameras, the alarm, the bars. All of it became part of our daily life. Mia, with a resilience surprising for her age, seemed to recover quickly. For the first few weeks, she insisted on sleeping in our room, but eventually she returned to her own. The talk of night mommy, as Mark and I had begun to call her between ourselves, nearly ceased. Sometimes Mia remembered the gifts she'd been given, or the stories told to her, but without the same excitement and attachment as before. I returned to my regular work schedule, though I cut back on night shifts. The police investigation hit a dead end. The camera footage didn't capture the woman's face clearly, and the fingerprints found in Mia's room matched no one in the database. The officers suggested it might be someone from our circle who knew our habits and daily routines, but we had no suspicions of anyone in particular. That night, when I caught her in the house, she had looked so much like me from the back, the same hairstyle, similar figure and clothes, that the thought of who it could have been haunted me. And it was exactly when we relaxed that the thing I feared most happened. It was a Saturday, and we decided to spend the day at a new children's entertainment center that had just opened in town. Mia was thrilled. There were trampolines, slides, ball pits, and everything else a child could dream of. We arrived early in the morning to avoid the crowds. Mia immediately ran off to explore the play areas, while Mark and I took a table in the cafe with a good view of the playground. We took turns watching her, first me, then Mark, while the other went for coffee or the restroom. Around noon, Mark got an important work call and stepped aside to talk in a quieter spot. I stayed to watch Mia, who was bouncing on the trampoline with other children. Keeping my eyes on her, I was finishing my coffee when I noticed a woman in a staff uniform approach the trampoline. She said something to the children and they began climbing down one by one. I didn't see her face. She had her back to me. But something in her movements felt vaguely familiar. A pang of unease struck me, but I brushed it off. Lately, I'd been overreacting to any woman who bore even the slightest resemblance to me. Mia hopped off the trampoline and followed the other children toward what seemed to be the next attraction under the woman's guidance. I began gathering our things to follow them when I noticed something odd. The woman took Mia by the hand and steered her away from the group, heading toward the exit of the play area. Panic flared inside me. I pushed through the crowd of parents and children. "Mia!" I shouted. "Mia, stop!" The woman turned at my cry, and in that moment I saw her face. It was Margaret, our former nanny. But she had changed. Her once blonde hair was dyed dark and tied in a bun like I usually wore. Makeup enhanced the resemblance, and in her eyes burned a mixture of fear and determination. When she saw me, she gripped Mia's hand tighter and quickened her pace toward the exit. Mia, spotting me, looked confused, glancing between me and Margaret. "Mia, run to me!" I shouted, shoving past the crowd. "That's not me! That's not Mommy!" Margaret bent toward Mia. "Don't listen to her, sweetheart. She's the bad woman who wants to separate us. Remember what I told you about her? Come quickly, our car is waiting." Mia hesitated, clearly confused by the situation. Margaret took advantage of her uncertainty and pulled her toward the doors. I nearly caught up when a large man accidentally stepped into my path, unaware of the drama unfolding around him. By the time I got around him, Margaret had already taken Mia through a side exit and was running across the parking lot. I rushed after them, catching a glimpse of a security guard shouting something at me, but there was no time to explain. Margaret was already sprinting toward an old silver sedan parked in the far corner of the lot. "Help! She's kidnapping my daughter!" I screamed, hoping to draw the attention of passers-by. A few people turned their heads, but no one intervened, probably thinking it was just a family quarrel. Margaret opened the car door and tried to shove Mia inside, but suddenly Mia began to resist, screaming and writhing in her grip. "I want my mommy," Mia cried. "Let me go." That gave me a few precious seconds. I lunged forward, and when I was only a few meters away, Margaret finally managed to force Mia into the car and slam the door. But before she could get behind the wheel, I caught up and grabbed her shoulder. "Margaret, stop!" I gasped, breathless from running and fear. "What are you doing?" "She's my daughter." Margaret turned, and in her eyes I saw such hatred that I recoiled. "No," she hissed, shoving me hard. I fell onto the asphalt, scraping my elbow painfully. Margaret used the moment to jump into the car. The engine roared and the vehicle shot forward. I scrambled to my feet and ran to my own car, luckily parked not far away. With shaking hands, I pulled out the keys, started the engine, and sped out of the lot, scanning desperately for Margaret's silver sedan among the traffic. Dialing 911 with one hand while gripping the wheel with the other, I spotted Margaret's car turning onto the bypass road. I followed, trying not to lose sight of her while frantically explaining the situation to the dispatcher. "My daughter, 4 years old, has just been kidnapped by our former nanny," I shouted into the phone. "Silver sedan. I didn't catch the plate number. They're heading west on the bypass road from the Rainbow Mall." The dispatcher remained calm, asking questions and clarifying details while I fought to keep Margaret's car in view. She had clearly noticed I was following and sped up, weaving recklessly between lanes. Mark! I had completely forgotten about my husband. As soon as the call with dispatch ended, I dialed his number. "Mark," I cried when he answered. "Margaret's taken Mia. I'm chasing them on the bypass. They're heading west. I already called the police." "What?" Mark's voice was full of shock and disbelief. "I'm coming right now. I'll follow your GPS." I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat and focused on the road. Margaret kept accelerating, and it was getting harder not to lose her. My fear for Mia mixed with a gnawing worry that Margaret, in her desperation, might cause an accident. Traffic thinned as we left the city. The silver sedan turned onto a smaller country road leading toward Lake Svetloy. I knew the area well. There were summer cottages and vacation homes out there, most of them empty this time of year. Following Margaret along the winding road, I soon saw flashing police lights approaching in the distance. The dispatcher must have acted quickly. Margaret noticed too and suddenly swerved onto a barely visible dirt track leading into the woods. I followed, silently thanking myself for recently trading my old car for an SUV. On a regular sedan, I'd never have made it. The road narrowed, grew rougher, tree branches scraping against the sides of my car. Suddenly, the forest opened, revealing a small old wooden house by the lake. Margaret's car stopped in front of it, and I saw her jump out, dragging a struggling Mia. I slammed on the brakes, leapt out of my car, and ran toward them. "Margaret, stop!" I shouted. "The police are already on their way. You have nowhere to run." She turned, clutching Mia's hand. Her face was twisted in a mix of fear and rage. "Get away!" she screamed. Mia spotted me and began fighting Margaret again. "Mommy!" she screamed, trying to break free. "My real mommy!" Those words only seemed to enrage Margaret further. She yanked Mia closer and dragged her toward the house. "She's brainwashed you," Margaret muttered to Mia. "But soon you'll understand who really loves you." I edged closer, careful not to make sudden moves that might push Margaret into something desperate. "Margaret," I said, forcing my voice to sound calm, though my heart was pounding in my chest, "let's talk. I know you care about Mia. You were a wonderful nanny, but what you're doing now is wrong, and it's scaring her." "You don't understand anything," Margaret cried, still dragging Mia toward the house. "I have to protect her from you. You're a bad mother. You leave her alone. You don't value what you have." They were almost at the porch when Mia, seizing the moment as Margaret turned to look at me, bit her hard on the hand. Margaret screamed in pain and loosened her grip, and Mia broke free, running toward me. I rushed forward, scooped my daughter up, and held her tightly, backing away. "It's okay, sweetheart," I whispered, stroking her hair. "Mommy's here." Margaret stood on the porch, clutching her bitten hand, looking at us with such a mix of pain and hatred that I instinctively stepped back farther. "You can't escape," she said suddenly, in a calm voice. "I won't let you destroy my family again." With that, she disappeared into the house, and moments later re-emerged, holding something I couldn't quite make out at first. But when she descended the steps and came closer, I saw with horror that it was a kitchen knife. Still holding Mia in my arms, I turned and ran toward my car. But I hadn't gone more than a couple of steps when I heard Margaret's quick footsteps behind me. Realizing I wouldn't make it to the car while carrying my child, I stopped abruptly, set Mia on the ground, and pushed her away. "Run to the car, Mia!" I shouted. "Hurry!" Mia immediately bolted, and I turned to face Margaret, bracing myself. She was already almost on me, knife raised to strike. In her eyes, I saw not just madness, but a terrifying determination. "You won't take her from me," Margaret whispered. "Never!" She lunged, and I barely managed to dodge. The knife sliced through the air just inches from my face. I stumbled back, frantically searching for anything to use as a weapon. Margaret attacked again, and this time I couldn't avoid her completely. The blade slashed through the sleeve of my jacket, leaving a burning cut on my forearm. I cried out in pain, backing away further. "Mommy!" I heard Mia's desperate scream. She was already at the car but couldn't open the locked door. The sound seemed to drive Margaret into a frenzy. "I'm your mommy!" she screamed, charging at me again. "Me, not her!" At that moment, I spotted a thick branch lying on the ground. Without hesitation, I grabbed it, and as Margaret rushed forward once more, I swung and struck her arm. The knife clattered to the ground, and I quickly kicked it away. But Margaret didn't stop. She slammed into me, knocking me to the ground, and we rolled over the fallen leaves. Her hands clamped around my throat, cutting off my air. "You never valued your daughter," Margaret hissed, tightening her grip. "But I do. I'll be a better mother than you ever could." Black spots danced before my eyes as I fought, trying to pry her hands off or push her away. My fingers found something solid, a stone. And with the last of my strength, I struck her head. She cried out and loosened her grip, and I shoved her off, gasping for air. But she recovered quickly and lunged at me again. We grappled, bloody and filthy, struggling for dominance. Suddenly I heard the sound of approaching vehicles and voices. Police! They had finally found us. Margaret heard it too and froze for a second. I used the chance to shove her off me and roll on top, pinning her down. "It's over, Margaret," I said, panting. "Give up." She glared at me with such hatred it felt like she could kill me with her eyes alone. "It's not over," she whispered. "I'll find a way to get her back. She belongs to me." The next moment, several officers burst out from the trees, weapons drawn. "Police! Don't move!" one of them shouted. I slowly stood, stepping back from Margaret, who lay on the ground staring blankly at the sky. The officers quickly restrained her, snapping handcuffs onto her wrists, while I ran to Mia, who was standing by the car, trembling and crying. I wrapped her in my arms, feeling her tiny heart pounding in rhythm with my own. "It's over now, baby," I whispered, kissing the top of her head. "Mommy's here. Your real mommy. And I'm not going anywhere." Just then, another car pulled up, and Mark jumped out, running toward us. He hugged us both tightly, and I finally let myself cry. With relief, with fear, with the realization of how close we had come to losing everything. The police led Margaret away, still muttering that Mia belonged to her. One of the officers came over to us to take a statement. "You need medical attention," he said, noticing the blood on my arm and the bruises on my neck. I nodded but didn't let go of Mia. I wasn't going to release her for even a second. While the paramedics treated my wounds, the officer questioned us about what had happened. I told him everything, about the strange night visits, the doll and the other gifts, about how Margaret had been slipping into our lives for months, preparing for this kidnapping. "Is there anyone else inside the house?" the officer asked, pointing to the cabin. I shook my head. "I don't think so." "She was alone. We'll check to be sure," he said, giving instructions to several of his colleagues. A few minutes later, one of the officers returned, looking disturbed. "Sir, you'd better see this," he said to his superior. They stepped aside, whispering quietly, occasionally glancing at us with worried expressions. Then the senior officer approached. "Ma'am, another girl was found in the house, about the same age as your daughter," he said gravely. "She isn't hurt, but she's in shock." "It appears she was abducted as well. By the way, she had a ceramic doll with her. You mentioned your daughter once had an antique doll that disappeared. I think Margaret gave this doll back to the girl. It's her favorite toy." I gasped, covering my mouth with my hand. "Do you know who this girl is?" The officer shook his head. "Not yet. We have reports of several missing children around this age from nearby towns. We'll check them all, but right now it's important that you and your daughter receive medical attention." We were taken to the hospital where doctors treated my wounds and examined Mia. Thankfully, she was unharmed physically, though the psychologist warned the trauma might surface later. Lieutenant Miller, who had been overseeing our case, came to the hospital as well. He reported that the girl found in Margaret's house had been identified as Anna Parker, who had gone missing from a neighboring town. Her parents were already on their way. "And what about Margaret?" Mark asked, holding my hand. The lieutenant sighed. "She's in custody at a psychiatric unit. The doctors say she has a severe mental disorder, preliminary diagnosis, erotomania, complicated by the loss of her own child 5 years ago." "Her child died?" I whispered, feeling a strange mix of pity and anger. "Yes, a 4-year-old girl. She died in a car accident together with her father," the lieutenant confirmed. "It seems after that, Margaret began working as a nanny, becoming deeply attached to the children she cared for." I remembered how Margaret had always been unusually tender with Mia, how often she'd said Mia reminded her of someone. I had assumed she meant a niece or another child she had cared for. Now it all took on a sinister meaning. When she worked for you, she likely began studying your routines, the lieutenant went on. After you dismissed her, she continued watching you. We found entire albums in her home, filled with photos of your family, especially Mia and you, Mrs. Levin. She was essentially creating a dossier, imitating your mannerisms, your clothing style, even your voice. She even bought the same perfume you use. She knew everything about you, down to the way you stroked your daughter's head. I shuddered, imagining Margaret watching us for months, waiting for the right moment. "And the duplicate keys?" Mark asked. "How did she get into the house?" "She admitted she made copies while she worked for you," the lieutenant replied. "After you reinforced security, she stopped coming. She was waiting for another chance." "And she got one," I said bitterly. The lieutenant nodded. "But now it's over. She'll receive treatment, and she will never come near your family again." We spent the night at the hospital, and the next day we were discharged. Following the psychologist's advice, we decided not to move. A change of environment could have intensified Mia's trauma, giving her the sense that safety didn't exist anywhere. Instead, we focused on stability and routine, the things a child most needed after such stress. Margaret was declared insane and committed to compulsory treatment in a psychiatric clinic. Lieutenant Miller assured us she would be kept there for a long time and that we would be informed of any changes in her condition or status. Months later, we received a letter from the parents of Anna Thatcher, the girl Margaret had kidnapped before Mia. They thanked us for helping bring their daughter back and wrote that Anna was gradually recovering. They suggested meeting so the girls could play together, perhaps helping each other heal. We agreed, and the meeting proved healing for all of us. Watching Mia and Anna laugh and play like ordinary children, we felt that life truly went on, despite the horrors we had endured. Of course, the scars of that ordeal remained. Mia sometimes woke, screaming from nightmares, calling for me. I became more cautious, almost paranoid about security. Mark often woke in the night to check the locks on doors and windows. But over time, the wounds began to heal. Mia no longer asked about the other mommy or spoke of nighttime visits. I took extended leave from work to spend more time with my family. We began to cherish every moment together, knowing how easily it all could have been taken from us. Sometimes, as I tucked Mia into bed, I remembered Margaret's words after her arrest, that I didn't value what I had. And though I'd never admitted aloud, deep down I knew there was some truth in that. I loved my daughter more than life, but work, stress, and daily burdens sometimes made me forget just how precious each moment with her truly was. Now I knew better. I held Mia tighter, listened more carefully, made time for the little rituals that meant so much to her. Bedtime stories, Sunday pancakes, walks in the park. And in those rare moments when fear returned, when the shadows in the corner seemed too dark or the creak of a floorboard sounded too much like footsteps, I reminded myself that we had survived. We had walked through the darkness and come out the other side, stronger and closer than ever. And in the end, isn't that what family is about? Protecting each other from monsters, real and imagined, being a refuge, a place where each of us can feel safe, loved, and accepted. And if someday the shadows gather again, if danger once more knocks on our door, I will be ready. Because now I know what I'm capable of when it comes to protecting those I love. And I know there are things no one will ever take from me as long as I live. Dear viewers, if you enjoyed this story, please support it with a like, a comment, or a subscription. Thank you.